Hello, hi everyone. Hi Cambly, how are you? Hello. If you can see me or if you can hear me, please type in the chat, hello. I want to see, it's great to see everyone here today. It's lovely to see all of you on this wonderful Sunday. I hope you are doing well. My name is Tutor or Teacher Greg. If you can see me, if you can hear me, let me know. Say something in the chat, say hello. All right. Let's see. Can you all hear me or see me in the chat? All right, excellent. I see one. Hello there. All right, hello, wonderful. All right, excellent. Everyone can hear me. That is great. It is wonderful to see all of you. All right, this is wonderful. So today we are going to talk about the American political vocabulary. This is great, so we're excited. But before we do that, let's go ahead and we'll wait just a minute or two for some more people to join, and then we will go ahead and get started. But in the meantime, I want to do a warm-up question, okay? A warm-up question just to see, get us thinking and some, different English phrases and different English minds. Let's go ahead and start with, I want to know, what do you like to do when it is sunny outside? What do you like to do when it is sunny outside? And let me know where you're from as well. I see we have someone from Bangladesh in the chat. That's exciting. Let me know where you're from, and let me know, what do you like to do when it is sunny outside? Sunny. It's nice and sunny here where I am, which is nice. I love sunny, beautiful days when there are times you could do all sorts of things outside. Hello, we have someone from Turkey. Hello. Wonderful. Yes, tell me where you're from and what do you like to do when it's sunny outside? All right. Oh, hello from Brazil. Walk your dog in the park. That's great. Playing cricket. Yes, awesome. Sports are very fun. Saudi Arabia. Wonderful. Like to stay in my room. Excellent. Walking. That's great. Hello from Pakistan. All right. Hello, Japan. All right. Like to hang out with your friends on the beach. That's wonderful. I love going to the beach. However, I don't live very close to a beach, so I have to drive very far before I can go to a beach. All right, hello from China, wonderful. Hello from Bangladesh again, hello. Going to a pool party, ooh, yes, I do love a good pool party. So that we can sit outside and you're by the water and with the sun on you, it's very nice. All right, oh, hello from Egypt, all right. Hello from France. Hello, Pakistan. Hello. Love to go hiking. That's great. All right. Don't like sunny days because it's hot. That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Winter is much cooler. That's nice as well. Hello from Korea. All right. Hello, Nepal. All right. Hello from Hong Kong. All right. Hello from Brazil. Wonderful. Well, I love seeing what you all like to do when it's sunny outside. For me, when it's sunny outside, I like to go outside and have a picnic and eat some food and hang out with friends outside in a park. So that's what I enjoy doing. All right, everybody. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Teacher or Tutor Greg. I am from the United States, and I currently live in Ohio, which is in the center of the United States. So it's a lovely time to be here. It is spring right now, so weather is turning a little bit warmer here, which is nice. So we're all excited about that. But let's go ahead and get started. So today we are going to talk about American political vocabulary. So today we are not going to talk about politics themselves, but we will talk about the vocabulary. Okay, different words that we use when we're talking about politics, okay? So, and keep in mind, this is just the American political system, okay? There's different political systems all around the world, and this is the one that we use in America. It's gonna be different in all sorts of English-speaking countries. So, let's talk about first, what when I say politics, what does politics mean? Okay, so we have two different things. We can talk about politics, or we can talk about political, okay? So politics is going to be the noun. Political is going to be the adjective, okay? So when we talk about the noun of politics, right, it is the system of government and the decisions made at a high level, okay? So those are politics, right? Just the systems of government and the decisions that are being made. That's politics, okay? A lot of times you will hear the term politics when someone is discussing something controversial or something that there are multiple opinions on. And they'll say, well, that's politics, right? And that's just the system of government at work. That's the system of things that are happening at a high level there. We also have the adjective, political, if someone is being political, right? So that, right, that are the multiple influences going into a decision, and it's often considered of high importance or controversial. Okay, so if something's high important and it's a lot of influences going in on it, it's considered political. Okay, so when you talk about something that may or may not be going through the government right now, right, that would be something that's political. Okay, there are a lot of things that we encounter every day that are political, right? The economy, right? That's political. You know, how money's going forward and backwards, right? Trade, that's very political, right? Because those are things and decisions that are made by the government at a high level. So that's politics, okay? So another important thing that we're going to keep in mind while we're talking today and going over this vocabulary is the term federal and the term state, okay? Who knows which one is bigger? What part of the government is bigger in America? Do we know? Is it the federal government or the state government? Which government is bigger? Which one has more power in the United States? Do we know? Good. Yes, federal. Exactly. The federal government. Good. I'm seeing a lot of federals there. Perfect. So the federal government in the United States is going to be at a higher, it's going to be bigger, right? It covers everything. And inside of that is the state government. So today we're talking about vocabulary of the federal government, okay? The one, when we think of the United States, that is the federal government. Where I live in Ohio, that is a state, and they have a state government. Now, we won't talk too much about the systems of government, but we will talk about the vocabulary, and that will be about the federal. So very good, good job. I see you all know a little bit about politics already, so that's great to see. So hopefully you learned some new words today. So first, when we look at the federal government, right, we have three branches, and you've probably heard what are these different branches before, right? We have the executive, legislative, and judicial. Okay? So these are all three branches under the federal government, right? These are all under the federal government. Okay? So the executive, you may have heard of the president, right? So currently, right now in the United States, the president is Joe Biden. So that is when we hear executive and president. It's the same, right? There's synonyms here when we're talking about government, okay? When we talk about legislative, that's called Congress, okay? And if you've heard the term Congress, right, we'll talk more about that, but Congress passes all of the different laws that we have, okay? And then we have judicial, right? You may have heard it's called the Supreme Court, right? And the Supreme Court is made of 9 justices. So they all deal with the law. They're judges, right? They judge all of the different laws within the United States. So these are our 3 different branches, okay? We have executive, which is the president. We have legislative, which is also called Congress. And we have the judicial, which is called the Supreme Court. So these are the 3 terms that we'll use when talking about the federal government. Okay, so let's look at a term when we talk about the president. All right, when we talk about the president, we talk about the White House. Okay, you may have heard that term before, White House. So that is an actual place. It's the place where the president lives and works. Okay, the White House is where the president lives and works, and that is under the executive branch, right? It's the president lives at the White House. Very good. Okay, so we can use this White House, though, and as another term, right? We can say we have to get this to the White House. So when someone is referring to the president, they will refer to the White House. It's a catch-all term. Okay, it's a term that we use for talking about the president and the executive branch. We talk about the White House. Okay, so when they say we need to go, I want to go see the White House, right? Or you want to talk to the White House. That means you want to talk to the president, right? At the White House. Now, here in the United States, you can also go to the White House. So I have personally walked and seen the White House, and you can go there, and it's just a big building, and it's old. So it's a big old building you can go look at. Wonderful. So that's the White House there. So now, when we talk about the legislative, you've probably heard of Congress before, right? When we talk about Congress, it is one term, but it has two different places, okay? Or two different types of people in Congress, okay? So we have what's called the House of Representatives, also known as the House. Oh, I see you have a question in the chat real fast. So we do see, why do we call it the White House and not the President's House? And we call it the White House because the actual paint on the outside of it is white. So the whole house is it's big and white. So it's a big white building. We call it the White House. And all of the presidents live in that White House. All right, excellent. Okay, so in Congress, we have the House of Representatives. You may have heard this called the House, right? A lot of people will just call it the House rather than its full name, the House of Representatives. And the House is a big part, right? There's 435 people in the House, okay? So each of these are elected by different ways, and we had different political ways to elect them within the states, right? But it's called the House. Now, the other part of Congress, right, there's two parts. We have the House and we have the Senate. And the Senate is smaller. It only has 100 members, okay, just 100. So it's about 4 times smaller. So both of these, right, we talked before, right? These are the federal branch, right? But the House and Senate are elected in the state, okay? So we have the House and Senate elected in the state to represent the federal. Okay, so when we talk about Congress, what do they do, right? What does Congress do? Well, Congress does a term you may have heard of called legislation, okay? Legislation, it's a noun. So when people are talking about legislation, it's the process of writing and turning bills into laws, okay? So that's the whole process we're going to talk about. We talk about bills, writing and processing bills, okay? So that is legislation, okay? So when we have legislation, we have 2 different types of things we talk about, right? We have laws and we have bills. So first, let's talk about laws. What is a law? So it's a rule that all people must follow, and it is passed and written by Congress. Okay? So who here knows, there's simple laws, right? What is a simple law? Does anyone have an idea of what a simple law that you know of? that they have here. Like, so in the United States, we have a law, you can't speed, right? You can't drive too fast in your car. That's a law. Is there any laws that you all know of? Yeah, see, traffic law, perfect. Is there any other laws that you might know of? I guess a very easy, simple law, like no speeding, right? Or no littering, right? You can't litter. Right, no smoking in closed areas. Perfect, that's a law. Excellent, very good, very good. So these laws, right? No smoking, excellent. Yep, that's this. We have the same law here as well, right? A law. Okay, so this is the different laws, right? We can also, there's another name for those, right? They're also called statutes or acts, okay? They can be called a statute or an act, right? That is a law, right? It's the same thing, right? Congress will make laws and they will become statutes or acts. So that is what we call that, right? But how does something become a law? Well, what we use is we have something called a bill, okay? So we have, Congress has laws, right? Which is all about legislation, and they make bills, okay? So a bill is also a noun, and it is a new idea that Congress would like to become a law, and Congress will vote on this bill to make it a law, okay? So we have a bill, right, is the beginning part of a law, okay? So a bill comes before a law. Does this make sense? A bill comes before a law, and together we call that legislation, okay? So a bill may or may not become a law, right? And we call this, right, we call a bill a piece of legislation, okay? A piece of legislation. That is called a bill, right? So when we talk about, exactly, bills are like suggestions. Exactly, very good. That's right, bills are like suggestions. They're suggested laws. They may or may not become one. But they are called a piece of legislation because it's all about the process, right? The legislation process, this is a piece of that. Good. Is it like a law project? So it's kind of like it's like a law idea, right? So it's something that they're thinking about. So you could think of it as similar to a project, but it's like a suggestion. It's a bill, it's a suggestion for a law that may or may not become a law later. And it is called a piece of legislation. So you may hear that term, and that is what we're referring to, is a piece of legislation, a bill or a law. Very good. Okay, so let's talk about another term that's used very often, okay? We have a term called a veto, okay? So a veto, right, V-E-T-O, veto, that is both a noun and a verb, okay? So when a bill, right, when a bill has been passed by Congress, right, when Congress passes a bill, before it becomes a law, right, the president must sign and agree. But if the president decides that they do not want to agree, right, they will veto the bill, right? They will refuse to sign the bill, right? That is a veto, okay? So they will refuse to sign the bill. Yes, exactly. A veto is like an objection. A veto is like saying, no, I don't want this bill to become a law, okay? So exactly, if you stop a bill, you veto the bill. And you may hear veto in other parts of speech, right? So if you suggest something to your friend, right? You suggest something to your friend and your friend says, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to veto that idea, right? They may say, I'm going to say that that idea is bad, right? I'm not going to agree. They can veto your idea, which is something that you may hear in other parts of speech. So it's not just political, but veto is where it comes from. It is a political term that is now used in other parts in day-to-day speaking, right? That's a veto. So someone provides an idea and then rejects it. Very good. Veto means reject. Very good. Okay. So our next term that you may have heard is one of my favorite terms. It's called a filibuster. Okay? Filibuster. So a filibuster is when Congress members stop a piece of legislation from being voted on. Okay? So a veto is a rejection by the president. A filibuster is a rejection by Congress. Okay? So a filibuster, oftentimes you are talking a lot, right? So if you filibuster something, right? If you're using a filibuster, you are talking and talking and talking, so other people cannot speak. That's called a filibuster. So if you are going to filibuster something, right? You are going to keep speaking and not let other people hear about it. So that is a filibuster. Okay. All right. Let's try a little bit. Let's see if we can know what is something that you would veto. What's something that you would veto? For me, I would veto if someone wants to eat pickles. I don't like pickles at all. I would veto pickles. So what is something that you would veto? What is something you would veto? Or I would veto going outside when it's too cold. Veto that. What is something you would veto? What would we veto? Veto carrots. All right, excellent. No carrots. All right, I would veto smoking, right? No more smoking. Okay, good. No more carrots. I would veto masks, okay? Yeah. I would veto very cold weather. I don't like that. Driving in rush hour traffic. Excellent. Yes, the president can veto a bill. Very good. No more barbecue, right? Good. Veto carrots. My dad veto going outside, right? Right. I would veto exercise. No exercise, right? If someone suggests exercise, I would say no, right? Remember, when you're vetoing something, it's because someone has suggested an idea, and you say no. I don't like that suggestion. Very good. Very good. Okay. I would veto working correctly. Very good. Wrong. Okay. Excellent. All right. So that's a veto. Okay. So let's talk about some other terms that you probably have heard of, right, in politics, right? Other terms you've probably heard of. If we have a term we think of called an election, okay? So an election, right, that's the process of choosing new government leaders, okay? It's the process, it's called an election. That's what we say here in the United States. We say we're having an election, right? We elect a president, we elect Congress, right? That's called an election, okay? So in an election, right, we generally have two types of people, right? Or two types of people running, right? And that's called a political party. Okay? So yeah, most people vote in elections. Very good. So a political party, right? That is an organization or a group of people created to help candidates win elections, okay? So a political party is going to help you win an election, okay? So in the United States, we have two main parties, okay? I know in a lot of other countries, there's lots and lots of parties, but in the United States, we only have two main parties, okay? And you may have heard of this before, but they are the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. Okay, we have the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. Let's first talk about the Republican Party, okay? So there are generally three different ways we use the term Republican Party. We will say Republican, we will also say conservative, or you may hear the GOP, right? Exactly, the right wing, right? So those are all differences that we hear, right? We have Republican, conservative, GOP, right wing, right? If you talk about someone being right, that means they're Republican. And think of right as in, your right arm or your left arm, right? Not as in correct or incorrect, but like right, turn right, or, turn left. So that would be, those are the different parties, right? We also hear that being called red, right? The Republican Party is called red because that's the color. So GOP, I see a question in here, GOP stands for Grand Old Party, right? It's just a nickname. It's a nickname called Grand Old Party. So that's the GOP. Very good. So when we talk about Republicans or conservative or GOP, the party is focused on tradition. Okay, tradition is something we think about here. And we won't get too much into the different viewpoints of each party, but no, we have two different parties, right? We have the Republican Party, and we also have what's called the Democrat Party, okay? That's also heard as being called liberal or progressive, right? Or the left, right? So the Democrat Party is the left, or they're called liberal or progressive, right? So it's another one of the parties that helps people get elected in the United States. We also heard that called blue, right? So Republican is red, Democrat is blue, right? There's no acronym for Democrats similar to the GOP, but we do have, right, we have them being called left or Democrat or liberal or progressive, right? And that progressive comes from the ideas that they generally have, which are, they call them more progressive ideas, right? So we have, the Republicans on the right are more traditional, and we have the Democrats on the left, which are more progressive. So those are the two main political parties, right? And between the two of them, they help with elections. Okay? So those are our two main political parties that we have, right? And we have elections for them. So why left or right? So that's a good question. So when we talk about left or right, it's just because you have like a candidate standing over on your left and you have a candidate standing over on your right, and they're both different and they have different viewpoints. So there's no correct or incorrect. It's just one on one side, one on the other side. So that's what we call it, left and right, okay? Or red and blue, right? So if you think about it, right, red, right? So the Republicans are red on the right. Lots of R's there, right? Republican, red. And then you have left, blue, right? Liberal, right? Left, blue, liberal, or left, blue, Democrat. So those are our two differences. All right, those are the two different parties that we have. That's a nice, easy way to remember that. So let's talk about just some fun terms, okay, that you may have heard of before that in politics, okay? So we've already talked about Republicans, Democrats, and what a political party is. Let's talk about a lame duck, right? So you may have heard the term lame duck, okay? So this is a fun political term, meaning a politician who is currently serving in office, right, but another person has been elected and will replace them. Okay? So a lame duck is someone who is already in office, right? But another person has been elected to replace them. So while they're in office, before someone else takes over. And when I say the term in office, that means they are the ones who are in charge, right? So in office means in charge. So right now, when we talk about who is in office, right? So right now, like Joe Biden is the president of the United States. So he is in office. Okay? So, but the period of time, right? The time between when you are elected to, and if there's someone else there, right? They are a lame duck, right? So that is a lame duck there. All right, that's kind of a fun term to think about someone who is in power right now, but they won't be for long because someone else has already been elected. Okay, so I saw a quick question in the chat that I want to address real fast. So when we have the term moderate, okay, so I heard someone say left and right and moderate, right? Moderate means that you are in between the right and the left, okay? Moderate is right here. You don't choose either political party. You believe on both sides, right? You think there's some things on the right that are correct and some things on the left. That's a moderate. Okay, good job, excellent. Okay, let's look at another one. So if we have a lame duck, right? Well, that means we also have someone called an incumbent, okay? So if you've heard the term incumbent, right? That is the person currently holding office, right? So the incumbent is the person in office right now. They are the ones who have power right now, okay? So, for example, if we talk about the president right now, right? Joe Biden is the incumbent, okay? Joe Biden's the incumbent president, the person in office right now. And the opposite of the incumbent is the challenger, okay? So we have incumbent is the person in office, and the person challenging them is the challenger, okay? Okay, good. So that's the incumbent, right? So the person who is in office right now is the incumbent, okay? Very good, very good. I also saw another question that I would like to address, and the question was, can you make a new political party? And the answer is yes, you can make a political party, but it's very difficult. And for the past 200 years, it's been the same two political parties that are going. So there's nothing against making a political party. It's just very difficult to do that. Okay, so we have, all right, another thing that we talk about in the United States is lobbying or a lobbyist, okay? So if you've heard of the term lobby, like to lobby or a lobbyist, right? That is the act of influencing legislation, right? And the political process. So if we have a lobbyist, right? A noun, a person, right? They are helping to influence Congress, right? They do what's called lobbying, right? So there's a noun here, right? To lobby, or a lobbyist, a person, and there's also a verb, lobbying, okay? So this lobby, like a lobby and a lobbyist, right? They help influence, right? They help influence Congress and the legislative process, okay? That is lobbying. Good, excellent. Okay, so our next term, we have a term called red tape, okay? And you may have heard of the term red tape before, right? So if we think of tape, right, it's tape like this, tape, but red tape, right, are rules or processes that seem excessive and prevent action or decision making. Okay? So red tape makes decisions and actions very difficult. So what is something in your life that you feel like is red tape, right? So for me, I have red tape because of my cat right now. My cat is sick, right? So I have some red tape, right? I have rules and processes that are too much, right? That's just red tape, right? Every morning I have to get up and I have to feed her some medicine and make sure that she's okay, right? That's the red tape that I have. Right? It's a rules or process, right? So that's what that means, right? That it's a rule or a process. So what is something that you have, like, remember, it has to be a specific process, right? What is a process that you have that's red tape that you have to do that is difficult, right? Something that is excessive. Let's see. So another red tape, right? You have to look at and yes, work can be red tape, right? It's the process of work, right? If there's process of work, okay, you can have red tape at your job. Very good. Working every day, so the process of that could be yes, that could be red tape as well. Right, you're picking up children, right? That's red tape. It's a process or rule that you have to follow. Good. Very good. Okay, excellent. So that would be red tape, right? It's another term that starts from politics, but we use it in our day-to-day life. Very good. Okay, and just a reminder, if you've missed any of this lesson, or if there's any more, if you want to watch any other lessons, or if you have to leave and want to watch this lesson later, all of these lessons will be posted on the Cambly YouTube channel that you can go and view directly after this lesson is done. So if you missed any part of this one, or if you've just joined us late, not a problem. This whole lesson will be recorded and posted online. Okay, so the next one we have is what you may have heard of called a jurisdiction. Okay, a jurisdiction. Yes, excellent. Like bureaucracy, right? Red tape is like bureaucracy. Very good. Okay, so jurisdiction. Okay, so jurisdiction, right? It's a geographical, right? And when we say the term geographical, right, it's a specific area, right? It's a specific area that is geographical, right? So a geographical area that will vote for the same issue and representatives, right? They may not vote the same way on an issue or for the same representative, but a jurisdiction is that specific area, okay? So to think about jurisdiction, think about a state, right? So I live in Ohio, and the state of Ohio, right? That's a jurisdiction, okay? Because I vote for all of the people in Ohio, right? I vote for different Ohio people. That's a jurisdiction. So think about where you live. You will live in a certain jurisdiction in the United States, okay? It's a specific geographical area, okay? Very geographical area. That's a jurisdiction. Okay, so other than jurisdiction, right? What else do we have, right? So when we're having elections, right? So you will vote within your jurisdiction, and you will vote for a presidential ticket, okay? A presidential ticket. So that is the team of people running for the president and vice president, right? We call that a presidential ticket, or just a ticket, because it's two of them together, right? They're a ticket together, right? So you will vote for a presidential ticket, okay? You won't vote for president and vice president. You'll vote for both of them at the same time. A presidential ticket. Very good. Okay. So next, when we have someone who is trying to run for office, right? They are running a campaign, right? You may have heard the term campaign before. So the campaign is the plan created to have someone win an election, right? Usually involving speeches and events, right? That is called a campaign. So when you have a presidential candidate going up and speaking and talking to everyone, that is a campaign, okay? You can also call that the campaign trail. You may have heard the term campaign trail. That means the process of going to different states and speaking and talking about they're trying to be elected. That's the campaign trail. Exactly, moving city to city. That's a campaign trail. Very good. So that is a campaign. Okay? So another term you may have heard of before, right, is canvassing. So when you are I see a question here that I will answer real fast. The difference between campaign and lobbying is a good question. So a campaign, right, is a candidate, right? It's a specific candidate, okay? So an example of campaigning, right, is when the president will go to a specific area and give a speech, right? That's a campaign because they are running for election. Lobbying, right? Lobbying on the other side is not a candidate, right? There's no candidate running for office. They are just trying to influence the bills and laws that are being passed in Congress, right? So in the United States, it's not illegal to lobby, right? You're influencing Congress. But a campaign, you will have the president and Congress running, right? Specifically trying to become elected. And that's a campaign. So very good question. Lobbying, right? You're not trying to win an election. Campaign, you are trying to win an election. All right, very good, very good. And can anyone become a lobbyist? Yes. So the political parties, right? So when we talked about the political parties, right? Republicans and Democrats, they will have their own lobbyists. Okay, so they will hire people to lobby for them. Very good. And you also have different businesses that will help lobby, like industries that will lobby as well. Good questions. Very good questions today. Okay, so canvassing, right? So when you are on the campaign trail, right? When you are having a campaign, you will have people help you by canvassing. So that is a political strategy of going to people's homes and talking about their preferred candidate. So when you are canvassing, you will walk to someone's house, you will knock on the door, and you will say, I would like to talk to you about my favorite candidate, right? You're asking for a vote. Very good, right? You are asking them to vote the way you think should be voted, right? That's called canvassing. Very good, very good. Okay, so my other favorite term is dark horse, okay? Like a survey. So canvassing, similar to a survey, but you are trying to convince them, right? You want them to vote your way. So a survey, you would ask them, how are they voting? A canvassing, you were saying, you should vote for this candidate. That's canvassing. Very good question. Okay, so a dark horse. Okay, a dark horse is a candidate who seems unlikely to win, but they do win. Okay, that's a dark horse. Okay, someone who seems like they won't win, but they do. So you can have that term not just in politics, right? Not just in politics, but that's in sports, right? You can have a dark horse in sports. You can have usually any competition, you can have someone be a dark horse. So someone who is unlikely to win, but they do win. A giant killer, yes, that's another term as well. So a dark horse is someone who seems like they won't win, but they do. Okay, so The last term that we can look at, right? The last term, let's look at swing state, okay? So a swing state, right? It is a state which may vote for either candidate, right? In any given year. So remember, we have our two parties, right? We have Republican or Democrat, right? A swing state is a state that may vote for the Republican one year and the Democrat the next year, right? Republican one year, Democrat the next year, right? That is called a swing state. And remember before, right, we talked about red and blue, right? So Republican, right, more red, Democrat, blue. Well, a swing state we call purple, okay? It's a purple state because red and blue mixed together makes purple, right? The colors, right? So red and blue make purple. So a swing state is a purple state. So you may have heard that term before, and that's what they're referring to, is a state that will vote either way. Okay, very good, very good. All right, so these terms, right? So there are a lot of different terms that we can use in the American political system. Remember, right? For a brief overview, we have the three branches, right? We have the executive, the legislative, and judicial, right? And we talk about the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court, right? And each one of those, right? These are synonyms, right? And then we have Congress. What does Congress do, right? They pass laws and they pass bills into laws, right? Calling that legislation. They can veto or filibuster those bills. And that's called the political process. All right. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the American political vocabulary. It's great to have you here. If you've missed any of this, you can go back and watch it. We will record the video and put it on the YouTube live channel. You can also watch hundreds of other videos there as well. We have a code for you as well right now. If you're new to Cambly, we have tutors available all times of the day. You can sign up for individual tutors and then have slots available to talk with them. If you're brand new, you can use this code GOLIVE for 36% off a year-long subscription. You can talk to tutors just like me about any topic you'd like to, whether you're just beginning your English journey or whether you've been speaking English for years and years and you just want to help refine. So thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful morning or afternoon or night, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.